question 1, which substance is a liquid at room temperature? So we estimate room temperature to be 30 degrees Celsius. And this chapter is from kinetic particle theory, where you need to identify the physical state based on whether is it solid, liquid, or gas. So what we do is we draw this line, we put melting point and boiling point. So the correct answer is B, because melting point is minus 7.2 degrees Celsius, boiling point is 58.8 degrees Celsius. And if you have to identify where is 30 degrees is in the middle of both melting point and boiling point, which means that the substance already melted, so it's a liquid, but has not boiled. So therefore, B is the answer, as the substance is liquid at 30 degrees Celsius. For the next question, question 2, there are two volumes given over here. This is from the chapter of measurement, where you need to understand how does a pipette and a burette measure volumes. So for a pipette, it's always one fixed amount, which is 25.0, which shows the alkali. And a burette can measure any amount, but will be accurate to one decimal place, and it has to be less than 50 cm3. Therefore, 22.5, which is any amount and is accurate, it belongs to a burette. And this is the volume of acid that they use, 22.5. Therefore, the answer is B. Question 3, positively charged ion comes from the chapter of chemical bonding, where you need to know that positive ion means it's a cation, which comes from a metal. And that means the metal, for example, calcium with 2.8.8.2 will lose electrons to have a completely filled valence shell. Therefore, a positive ion must have less electrons than proton, because it loses electrons over here to form the positively charged ion. So in this case, if you check every single substance and you compare it, the proton and the electrons, you will find that only option D, the substance at option D, shows that there is 18 electrons but 20 protons, which means that it is, for example, calcium, because calcium will at first have 20 protons, which also means it has 20 electrons, and then it loses 2 electrons to form 18 electrons over here. So this is a positively charged ion, where there is less electrons than protons. Question 4, mixture of nitrogen and oxygen gas. This is from the chapter of element compound mixture, where you identify that a mixture is of different substances. And since because nitrogen means it's N2 and oxygen means it's O2, if you look at the molecule over here, this can be considered as N2, and this can be considered as O2, and they are not combined together chemically because it's a mixture. So therefore, B is the answer. For question 5, the two atoms form a compound. This is under the chapter of chemical bonding, where you need to know about the type of bonding. In this case, it's ionic bonding, which I'll explain in a moment, and also how to write the chemical formula. So first of all, 2.8.1 is the electronic structure of sodium, which means it's a metal. The other way to know this is 2.8.1 means is group 1. So if it's group 1, it also means it's a metal. Next, 2.6 means it is group 6. And if it's group 6, it means it's also a non-metal. And 2.6 is the electronic structure of oxygen. So my metal and my non-metal will give me ionic bonding, which is option D. And how about the chemical formula? How do we get the chemical formula over here? So what we do is, since 2.8.1, for it to become an ion, it will need to lose 1 electron, which means it's as if it's Na+. So in this case, since this is X, it will be X plus. And next, 2.6 will need to gain 2 electrons to become 2.8 completely filled valence shell, which is as if it's O2 minus. And in this case, it's represented as Y, so it's Y2 minus. So if you have X plus and Y2 minus, how do you get the chemical formula? So if you compare the charges, you need X plus and another X plus, so that my charges 2 plus will balance 2 minus, which means I need to have 2X. Therefore, my chemical formula is X2 and 1Y. So X2Y is the formula. Therefore, the answer is option D. For question 6, the answer is option B, because if you put the values of 1 and 2 into the equation and we count the left hand side. So left hand side of hydrogen, there is 2 over here and another 2 over here. So 2 plus 2 gives me 4 hydrogen on the left. And for my lead, there is only 1 on my left, so there is also 1 on my left over here. And then for the right hand side, if we put the values again 1 and 2, we will see that there is 1 lead, which gives me a Y, okay, which means lead is 1 because there is 1 lead. And if Z is 2, 2 times 2 will give me 4, which means my hydrogen will be 4. Okay, and in this situation, my equation is balanced. You can also count the others, for example, sulfur. 1 sulfur and 1 sulfur is already balanced. And oxygen, 4 plus 2 gives me 6. 4 plus 2 also gives me 6. So all the other elements are balanced. Therefore, the answer is B. For this question, this is from the chapter of acid and base, where we want to be able to understand what does neutralize mean. So neutralize means pH of 7, and what happens is sodium hydroxide was being added into acid, and therefore they're asking you how much sodium hydroxide is needed to neutralize it. So neutralize is pH of 7, so you just indicate on the graph pH 7, and when you reach the curve, dot it down and you will see 25. So therefore the answer is C. This question is also from the chapter of acid and base, where we are talking about solid R being able to react with acid and being able to react with an alkali. And this means it must be an amphoteric oxide. Amphoteric oxide is an oxide that can react with both acid and alkali. And the amphoteric oxides that you memorize is 3, zinc, aluminium, and lead. So the answer here will be option C, which is lead. Question 9. Which substance is used to decrease the acidity in soil? Again, this is from the chapter acid and base. So to decrease the acidity in soil means we must add a substance that can react with the acid. And calcium hydroxide is an alkali which is commonly used to add into soil. So option B is the answer. Next question, this is also under the chapter of acid and base, or even under the chapter of metals. So what will not react with sulfuric acid to form copper 2 sulfate? So copper will not react because copper, even though it's a metal, it's unreactive. For the next question, question 11. So the reason why chemical properties of sodium and potassium are similar is because they have the same number of valence electrons. They all have the number 1 valence electron. And since they have the same number of valence electron, which is 1, they are in group 1. So therefore, the answer would be they are the same group of the periodic table. Question 12 is on the chapter of metals. When it talks about layer of metal atoms can slide over each other, means that the metal is soft, malleable, and ductile, because Malleable means can bend without breaking, which means the atoms must be able to slide over one another. Ductile means can be put into wires, and that also means the metals must be able to slide over one another. So which property cannot be explained by this reason? It will be option C. For metals to conduct electricity, it's not about the atoms sliding over one another, but instead it's about something else which you have not learned, which is mobile electrons. The electrons can move. Question 13. This chapter is under the chapter of metals. And it says that this metal can react readily with acid, but not with cold water. So you look at the reactivity series. Please stop calling me zebra in library. Okay, we left out carbon because carbon is not a metal. So potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, these are the four that can react with acid and can also react with cold water. So what is the metal that can react with acid but cannot react with cold water? That would be zinc or iron. Okay, so calcium cannot be the answer because calcium can react with both. Copper cannot react with anything, it's unreactive metal. Magnesium can react with both. So only zinc is the correct answer because zinc can react with acid but cannot react with cold water. Instead, zinc will react with steam. Okay, so zinc can only react with steam and acid, but it cannot react with water. For question 14, this is on the chapter of metals, and all reactions will happen here. Therefore, the answer is B, because all reactions will happen here. How about what happens over at these two bottom areas? So for these areas, it's simply where we collect the products. So iron is collected here, and then molten slag is collected at C. So this is just where we collect. And how about A? A is where we put in the iron ore, the coke, and the limestone. So the reactions again happen in the middle area over here. Next question, question 15. So why do we recycle? We recycle because of many reasons, which is stated over all these options. But it says, which explains why metals will be available in the future. So definitely we recycle as there is limited amounts of metals, and because we recycle this limited amount of metals, metals will be available in the future. Therefore, the answer is option A. Question 16 is a chapter in atmosphere, and you need to know the percentage of gases in air. So option C is the answer because in air there is 78% of nitrogen. Question 17 is also under the chapter of atmosphere under pollutants. So the pollutant that is formed by lightning activity as well as in engines in high temperature would be nitrogen monoxide or nitrogen dioxide, because nitrogen in the air can only react with oxygen either during lightning or at high temperatures in the engine. Question 18 is the chapter of Intro to Organic Chemistry, where you learn about fractional distillation, and there is fractions like P, P, and PDLB. Petroleum gas, petrol, naphtha, paraffin, also known as kerosene, diesel oil, lubricating oil, and bitumen. So the fraction that is used for aircraft is known as paraffin, also known as kerosene. For question 19, this is a chapter of alkanes and alkenes. This is on alkanes only. So alkanes, the general formula is CnH2n plus 2. So if it has 8 carbon atoms, means C8H 2 times 8 plus 2, which this actually gives me 16 plus 2, which is 18. So C8H18 will be the answer. Question 20, it says unsaturated hydrocarbon. Unsaturated means it contains a carbon-carbon double bond. So the only option that gives you a carbon-carbon double bond will be option B, because it has a carbon-carbon double bond. Option C is not correct because it is oxygen with a carbon. So therefore it is not correct.